A very good afternoon to you, Dr. Ramsarran here, just brushing through my notes, especially those I picked up from the headlines in the Mirror newspaper. Incidentally, this weekend Mirror is excellent, well put together, bold headlines, bold lettering on the front page, which says many things that we will be referring to in today's program. As you see, the operator has put up the topic for today, which is fairly wide. That is to say that by December the 2nd, or on December the 2nd, the Parliament must be dissolved. And why is that so? Because after a certain fixed period after the Parliament is dissolved, elections will be held by our Constitution. And as you know, that date has already been announced, March 2nd. So if you come backwards, the number of days that are demanded by the Constitution for us to stay right and correct and on a fit and proper place in Guyana's history is December the 2nd. So December the 2nd is when we're expecting, and I noticed the headlines are very bold. As a matter of fact, if the operator can pull up this, it would be good. This is going to be like our guide sheet today. It says, protest will resume if Parliament is not dissolved on December the 2nd. That's why today we chose that theme, that topic. This is hitting the headlines of the major political party in Guyana, People's Progressive Party, and its allies, the civic component, and of course many people in the trade unions, in the religious community, and civil society, and so on and so on. Protests will resume if Parliament is not dissolved on December the 2nd. So a lot of action in December, right? Things are going to be happening for Christmas. And that was being said by Dr. Bheri Jagdeo, leader of the opposition and General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party. Remember, our numbers are on the screen. You can call the cell phone 26238-696, and we'll be here about an hour or two after the program to take calls and listen to those persons who could not get through on the live program, or who had other issues they would have wanted to discuss and not on with the teleaudience. GCOM is moving ahead with plans to remove over 25,000 Guyanese. I notice a lesser figure is being quoted now. This paper, of course, was printed yesterday. I think it's something like 19,000 Guyanese, but this is what the newspaper Mirror at that time had. GCOM moving ahead with plans to remove over 25,000 Guyanese from voters list, and of course, since then there have been other news coming out, glad news coming out from the Elections Commission, and I saw something today saying that no one will be knocked off the list by the head of the commission. So we got to look at that. But as far as a significant portion of the population and the reading public knows, GCOM is moving ahead with plans to remove 25,000 Guyanese, because those are the 25,000 Guyanese who have not been able to collect, or for some other reason, whatever it was, have not collected their cards, their ID cards, which is lying in the GCOM's possession, GCOM's custody, since as far back as 2008, if my reading is correct. 10 months since no confidence motion passage, key reserves being depleted. And this is something that Dr. Jagdeo and the People's Progressive Party warned about. The government is going on hunky-dory, just as if things are normal, but this is a caretaker government, and that was re-emphasized in the ruling by the Chief Justice. But 10 months have passed. Imagine 10 months have slipped by since this government should have resigned. 10 months, and the fat cats are still there, and even giving themselves big allowances from time to time. 10 months since the motion of no confidence was passed in Parliament, when Sharon Das became part of in our history, deep part of our history, written in stone. Sharon Das, who broke ranks with his conscience, had a conscience vote, and said afterwards in several interviews, but in one particular which I was listening to, in the corridors of Parliament, that he just got fed up with how things were going, and he was not seeing. He felt it would have been immoral of him to continue not saying yes all the time to the policies of the government. And of course, he voted with the opposition, with the People's Progressive Party, C. And of course, that brought in a whole different things. When we were going along casually, normally, hoping that Parliament will continue normally for the PNC, at least, the government, there was this sudden splash by one man who decided his conscience could take it no more, and he voted with the People's Progressive Party on the no confidence motion. And that has been 10 months already. Imagine 10 months have slipped by. 10 months have slipped by, right? Many babies could have been born in that time, and still there is no indication that they will resign. They have instead announced the date for elections, which is March the 2nd. And if you announce March the 2nd, it means that by backward calculation, or reading back the days, you have to dissolve Parliament on December the 2nd. And there it is clear. They thank the operator for pulling it up. December the 2nd, there is going to be more protests. This probably implies that the leader of the opposition is not envisioning protests in the meantime, because there have been quite a lot of protests. The most massive and the most impressive happened a few weeks ago in the evenings, in the afternoon and evening hours and into the night outside CARICOM headquarters, when the leadership of the CARICOM countries were gathered, and the leader of the opposition led his team. Finale was there too, presidential candidate was there outside, and of course there was a big, huge police cordon, huge, massive, the biggest police operation in several years, of course, but that was one of the biggest crowds in years too, right, mobilized by the People's Progressive Party. And the whole aim of the barricades was to keep the PPP and its supporters and villagers in the area from being able to express vocally their opposition to what was going on in the country to the leaders of CARICOM who were meeting at that venue on the East Coast. So though 10 months have passed, just imagine it, 10 months have passed since the passage of that no confidence motion, and still the Constitution is being breached, the Constitution is being honored in the breach. So we're allowing you to comment today on several various issues. It's wide-ranging. What action do you think should be taken if the Parliament is not dissolved? The PPP has already announced boldly protests will continue. Some people are saying, with a little bit of a shrug of the shoulder and a little bit of resignation and even a little bit of disgust, that the protests so far have not been bringing all the results or more results were expected. Okay, but the mere fact that, for example, the government has suddenly become very active. They're running out to the various communities. They were recently in Linden a few weeks back. Just I was there. I was there too with a few other leaders of the party and the PPP Civic in Linden. They're suddenly budging themselves. The fat cats with these fat salaries and so on are suddenly budging themselves and getting out into the countryside, into the remote areas, and into the distant locations, population points like Linden and so on. So at least it's giving them some discomfort, and they're at least feeling the pressure and the heat from their supporters. Because today I hope to talk to the supporters of the PNC, APNU, AFC too, because they're key incompetent, and I'm certain like Charan Das, regardless of how much they curse him, they must have a conscience too, and they must be able to say, well, enough is enough. Right? 10 months have passed since the no confidence motion, and since the PNC likes to expound on the Constitution and give the impression that they're the best thing about knowing about legality and constitutionality. The supporters, the members, but more particularly the supporters, should want to ask them, well, why did you breach the Constitution in the first place? Why were you? They were actually begging Charan Das in Parliament, Charan, change the decision. Of course, they were begging, actually crying. You can see if you check the footage, the video footage. So the members of the party, that is APNU, AFC, and the AFC, but mainly APNU, which APNU basically is the PNC, People's National Congress, the old Bordermite party, and it just baptized itself, thrown a little camouflage to get rid of the baggage that it brought to the public, especially to the young people, the younger persons, so they would not associate it with those dark days of banning, those dark days of restrictions under the PNC. So we need to quietly engage the supporters and even the members of the PNC to bring some reason to the discussion. 10 months have passed, and still we have to wait another 6 months approximately before we get elections. And what have they done in the meantime? What have they done? Practically nothing. As a matter of fact, it's so disgusting when you hear President Granger speaking about some of the things that they're doing. And then you have to chuckle to yourself. those are things that the PPPC had been implementing, had started, and there's not one single thing except the Granger buses. Not one single thing. No. Besides the Granger buses, they also built that stadium in Homestretch Avenue. So those are things. Those are things that we should be asking. You have 10 months. You seem to be bidding time. You seem to be trying to stretch things out. You've announced now the elections on the 2nd of March. What have you done? What have your party done? What has the PNC done? What has the APNU done for us in the meantime? They've taken away the allowance from the school kids, $10,000. They've taken away the pension, the money that the pensioners used to get some money, used to get a little subsidy for light and water. That's gone. So they have done things, but those are negative things. What are some of the positive things? I see they're building some roads, but then again, when I check my notes from the old cabinet notes, those are things that had already been passed by the PPPC and implementation should have been started soon after the elections, or even just a little bit before. But sometimes you have difficulties building roads. You have utility services next to the road and so on, and you need to negotiate and you need to talk to people so that that infrastructure is not destroyed when you're making the roads. So you look at all over in Region 3, the nice modern road that you have there, that was conceptualized and implementation started on the PPPC. So ask yourself, what else has the PNC done besides taking away the subsidy to the old people and the $10,000 to the youngsters? They've also added 200 more items they've VATed. They put VAT on 200 more items, although they were criticizing the VAT as being something alien, something oppressive when the PPP introduced it. The PPP, remember, scrapped 7 other taxes and put on one easy to manage tax, VAT, value added tax. But there was a big commotion. As a matter of fact, the People's Progressive Party and the Civic had to go out to explain, and we did that very efficiently and effectively right across the country to explain what this is. It was not a new tax; it was a tax which was VAT I'm speaking about, which was replacing rather. I think 7 other taxes, consumption tax, and a whole set of things that we had inherited from the past. So we now enter election period. Hello, you're on to Getting It Right. Good afternoon. Could you lower your volume?
Sure.
Okay. Please lower your volume. The operator is frantically waving. Put down, lower the volume so that you don't interfere with the quality of the thing. So we come back to this present period now, right?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, go right ahead. You're on to Getting It Right.
Yes. What is your take on the bonus, the yearly bonus that the public servant or the joint service used to get, that the former administration used to get for their money? And that is people that took it away. What is your take on that?
Well, those are one of the. I was being in a very sarcastic way listing some of the things they did. That was a fourth or fifth on my list. They took away from the pensioners, they took away from the school children, and they took away that little TUPS, that year-end bonus that the government, the PPPC government used to give the discipline services. I think it's police, army, prison service. I think those were the main three who benefited. So I don't know. I think the PPP is looking at this point of view to keep increasing the $10,000 gradually until it came to $50,000. You know, that we saw that possibility from how we were managing the economy, and this was said publicly and officially. Similarly, I suspect it wasn't said so for this bonus to the discipline services, but I suspect that incrementally it would have been increasing slightly, because we must accept they're doing a job, they're putting their life on the line, and the salaries are not the best. I mean, that's a problem that we got to grapple with, and even a new government coming in will have to grapple with it, right? So I don't know if I've answered your question. I think it should be re-implemented, and probably even a little, but they can't put more as the PPP had wanted to, because here what they're saying. 10 months since the no confidence motion passage and key reserves being depleted. The present government is depleting the reserves that we left there. So it's hardly likely that the government, now the present government, will be in a position to re-implement or reinstate that bonus, right? Okay? Hello? Okay, I think he's still on it. Okay, so that's the first question of why. I think he had some follow-ups. I'm sorry, I wasn't connecting with him. So he can call back if he has any connecting questions, or if he has anything you want to discuss confidentially after the program. I'll still be here for about an hour taking notes. Now, 10 months since the no confidence motion was passed, and only thing that we've seen is key reserves being depleted. And in key factors or key things, key programs that the PPPC had implemented are being dismantled. Right, are being dismantled, and some harebrained schemes. One particular harebrained scheme being the construction of the new stadium, so-called stadium on Homestretch Avenue. And what's more, that the caller might want to note, is that we have not been given the accounts rate, how was the money spent, where did it come. We were told initially that it was being done by the private sector. It was a gift by the generous private sector to the Guyanese people, and of course to the PNC APNO ruling party as part of their victory, right? But where is the documentation? Those are things that we need to look for, because they're way overdue. And now this government, the present government, is 10 months, having 10 months of added life, because the life was supposed to end on immediately on the 21st of December last year with the passage of the no confidence motion. And of course, we've forgotten, many people would have forgotten Charan Das, but his role was small in terms of time, small in terms of his actual wording and his actual contribution then, but impactful, historically impactful, and probably we must start looking at those things. And the members and supporters of the PNC, APNO FC, must probably take pause and wonder, how could this have happened? How could it be that we are in office still, when we, that is the PNC, APNO FC, committed to defending the Constitution, when it was the APNO AFC combination in the past, before the government changed, always attacking the PPPC on constitutionality and calling for the implementation of the Constitution, or following of the Constitution, and even continuation of changes to the Constitution. So those are interesting things that we would like you to probably consider, and in your calls. And the next, I see some of my notes here which are relevant to the first caller. He asked, what did I think of the withdrawal of the bonus, the year-end bonus? Well, there are many other things that have been withdrawn. For example, I mentioned the school children, the $10,000 to the school children, and the old people's, the old age pensioners were getting something for the light. But then again, they seem to have been, the whole administration seems to have withdrawn in a certain peculiar way that the population only picks up indirectly. For example, this morning, on the previous program on another station, Getting It Right on another station, or my lunch date with the public on Channel 69, it came out clearly that there's an acute shortage of basic medications at certain hospitals. And I'm saying certain hospitals because I have not been able to check to see if it's at all the health facilities. But for example, at major ones like Diamond Hospital. So they seem to be withdraw. If you want to attach this term withdraw with the government, they're withdrawn from everything. Granger withdraw from the public. He doesn't take much press conferences, and when he does, they're staged. The government, the ministers seem to have withdrawn into themselves. You hardly see them visiting. Suddenly they start to jump up when they realize that the no confidence motion had bitten them. So they've withdrawn. But coming back to the aspect of withdrawing supplies to the hospitals, to the health centers, that is one of the things that you out there, you out there, not only persons who might be critical of the PNC, but persons who are probably members or even senior members and supporters of the PNC. How on earth you can have such a change? How on earth could Diamond Hospital, Diamond is a gem, I'm not playing on words, Diamond, I mean the Diamond Hospital is a gem. The PPPC deliberately and specifically placed it there because for the entire history, our history, we've never had a self-respecting real hospital on the east bank of the Amarara, which is a very populated corridor of the coast. So what is happening there? These reports are not deniable. It's happening. Many people reporting it, and I've checked them. Basics are not available. Okay, and besides that, the attitude of the staff. That attitude of the staff seems to have changed from the initial years, from 2009 when the PPPC opened that hospital. When of course it was dominated by the senior leadership was Cuban professors and Cuban medical personnel. So we need to look at this. There seems to have been a withdrawal of leadership and guidance by this present government in key sectors, and I mentioned the health sector. And probably if you people out there can bring us more information as to how the health facilities in your area, in your community are working. I've just mentioned the Diamond Hospital, and there were so many other issues that came out of that. The attitude of the personnel, I'm shocked by that because I used to boast about the good approach of the staff, especially the local staff. But this morning, if you would have listened to the program, hello, welcome to Getting It Right.
Hello, good afternoon.
Go right ahead.
Hello?
Go right ahead. I'm hearing you.
Oh, yes, sir. Sorry about that. I'd like to make 3 points. The first thing is, I was watching a program on Sharma, and there seems to be a lot of vitriol that is against President Jagdeo. Against Mr. Jagdeo, because they're saying that Jagdeo has refused to go to Parliament, hence the bonus cannot be paid, which is utter nonsense. And I'm suggesting to you that when Mr. Jagdeo has his next press conference on next Thursday, he should address that.
All right, I wasn't even thinking on that. Thanks to that point.
Right, that's one. The second point is that I was pleasantly surprised that I listened to the presidential candidate, Dr. Irfan Ali, and his presentation and his interview via the Kaicho News
broadcast.
Yeah. I call him, he is, to my mind, Jagdeo Partu. That guy is so, he just looks...
The guy was very knowledgeable, smooth.
Fantastic, not only knowledgeable, but he had everything at his fingertips.
Yes, exactly. You're so correct.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And I was so surprised because, I always had respect for him, but today that respect went through the sky because he's fantastic and he's going to make a good president.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So I'm really happy, right? But one thing, the other thing that Dr. Jagdeo should address at his press conference is this. Now, Dr. Ali said that he did not discuss this with Dr. Jagdeo, but for him, he would like Dr. Jagdeo to be his vice president. Okay? Now, that is being taken out of context, where they're saying now that Jagdeo is going to be running for the vice presidency of the country.
Okay.
Which is total nonsense.
Yeah.
Because you know that if Dr. Jagdeo, right, is elected as a vice president, and if anything happens to Dr. Irfan Ali, then he would become the president, which is unconstitutional at this point in time, unless there's a change in the constitution.
Yeah.
Right? So these are things...
Yeah, but don't move off that point. I did hear that, Mr. Dr. Irfan Ali did say that, And I think you're right, it's been taken out of context. He's just expressing great admiration for the contribution
Yes.
that, but there's so many other things that Dr. Jagdeo and others can do. Or many of them, there's so many postings, so many things that they can do. The PPP is not so narrow that you got only vice president,
Absolutely.
the vice president being
The thing is,
someone.
I make sure that I listen to Dr. Jagdio's press conference every single week, sometimes 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, and you got to share it. You got to encourage other people to listen to
because
it.
I want the facts,
Yes.
right? And I am going to now start to listen to Dr. Ali, because that guy is fantastic. He is really phenomenal.
Yes, and he will grow in the job.
Absolutely.
He will grow in the job, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
My final point is this. There seems to be, I don't know, a caller today mentioned that the caretaking President Granger is losing it, and he was put to the court for that. But this guy, he lies so much. This guy lies so much about every single thing that one is wondering exactly if he's all up there. It's sad. And I'm so sad, and I'll tell you why. It's sad because of what is happening to the presidency of this country. Forget whoever is the president. The presidency of this country.
The office, you mean, right? That's what you're referring to.
Yeah. The presidency of the office of the president of this country is supposed to be a decent, law-abiding, and ethical office. Now that office has been dragged into the mud. It is so sad. I'm not talking about Mr. Granger. Forget that. Forget him. I'm talking about the presidency of the country of Guyana.
Okay.
That presidency should be held to
High esteem. But tell me, that's 2 points you've covered. You promised us 3 points. What's the third one?
The other point is, I think by now you should start to get your manifesto off the ground. At least I know it's off the ground, but get it into the public domain so people can be aware of it. So when you start your campaign, all right? Okay. People should be able to have time to study it and then react to it.
Okay,
right?
Thanks for that advice, but let me tell you, it's on the verge of being released. But of course, we want to keep some. It's just party politics and party tactics and strategy. But there was a very knowledgeable committee, Manifesto committee, and of course, they relied on other resources outside the committee. And that work is well advanced, but I can't tell you exactly when it will be released.
Yeah, but
I understand your point. You're talking about timing. It got to be timed correctly. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks for those 3 points, especially all were very interesting points, but the last one jumps out. The manifesto, the People's Progressive Party manifesto, is about to be released in a short while. I won't mention days or times or weeks, but it will give a guidance. It's a contract between the party and the public, the voters, the wider Guyanese public, and of course we'll be very meticulous with what we're doing. And of course, it's under the guidance of the leadership of the party. So thanks to that we were reminded. And I was looking back at the manifesto of the other parties at the last elections, and some of the things, for example, youth. The PNC was hitting this point heavily. The youth, but then we look and see the issues that were being addressed in the manifesto are not matched in life. In the same style or matched with like action in real life. You heard a little bit of some school buses, some Granger buses, but that party was more to facilitate the Grangers and the President Granger's name being seen all the time rather than for the school kids. Because as we know, I don't think they've expanded. It's gone out. People probably even forgot how many buses were being given initially, and if any more were given. So the manifesto is coming out shortly, and in the meantime we should probably check the manifestos that were presented to the Guyanese voter at the last election, so that we can get an idea how many things were done. For example, VAT, I spoke on, VAT was attacked heavily by the PNC, not only implicitly in its manifesto, but in its PR campaigns and on the media, printed and electronic. And suddenly we see they reduced the VAT by 2% from 16 under the PPP to 14. But then they expanded it across a whole raft of items, new items, 200 more. So those are the things that you need to look at when you're reading the manifestos of the two parties, or if other parties come forward. You must say, this is what the PPP promised, this is what the PNC promised. How does real life match up with it? How does real life match up with it? So those are some of the things. And let's do a quick little shift. I noticed in the headlines too, the Rodney Commission of Inquiry, the assassination by the PNC elements of Dr. Walter Rodney. That's back on the table. And there's unfortunately for some people, the WPA leadership, small little leadership, seems to be in bed with the PNC APNO AFC, and their thoughts that they might be selling out to the extent that they will be ducking the Commission of Inquiry into the assassination of Dr. Walter Rodney. What do you think? The WPA has issued statements or a statement saying that they're still hopeful that it will be released, and so on and so forth. So where do we see this? Had not other persons, for example, members of the family, Rodney family, raised this issue or make comments somewhere on this issue, would WPA have been commenting on it? How could you get into a coalition with a party that assassinated one of your main leaders, and one of the probably greatest sons of the soil of Guyana? How could that be? Did that come up at the negotiations when you were making this coalition? Was it part of the negotiation? Was it mentioned that for us to be part of the coalition, WPA to be part of this coalition government, you have to release the report within such time, or incrementally, or whatever? But the Guyanese people are still awaiting. Remember this, let me throw your memory back. The commission was abruptly stopped by President Granger when he took office, almost immediately. Probably that was one of the first acts. No, the first act was among the first acts, wasn't stopping the Rodney Commission of Inquiry. The first act was padding up their salaries. The Fat Cats decided that the salaries that the PPPC government ministers and advisors, cabinet ministers and advisors were getting was not enough. So the Fat Cats doubled that up. The Fat Cats doubled it up, and one of the first decisions they made, a secret decision too, was to increase their own salaries and allowances by 100%. 50% to 100%. So I did make a mistake. The first act they did was not squashing or putting under the counter or in a drawer the Rodney, the Commission of Inquiry into the assassination of Dr. Walter Rodney, but it was increasing their salaries, right? So that also addresses the first question the question from the first caller. What do we think about the withdrawal of the monies that were being spent as bonuses, year-end bonuses for the discipline services? The answer is straight, and you see it from the calculations here. If they want to give themselves, that is the small clique want to give themselves hundreds, massive increases in salaries and benefits, it has to come from somewhere. And nothing new is coming into the economy, no new projects, nothing generating. As a matter of fact, in forestry, things shut down. The bauxite, it was in problems, right? Forestry, there was big complaints, especially with the small loggers, because they used to be selling their logs at guaranteed prices and assured that they would get them sold to the Chinese company, which when it pulled out or was forced out, that outlet collapsed, or that source of income for the small loggers collapsed. So the PNC, APNU, same thing, right? Decided that they needed to increase their salaries. To do that, they got to get money from somewhere. And that is why there's certain suggestions, certain people thinking that is why they had to cut back on the monies paid to certain people. The pensioners, no more $10,000 for your water rates and your electricity rates. The school children, the $10,000 per child, gone. The army, the police, the prison services, your year-end bonus gone. Why? Add up all of those sums over a period of time. That is the monies that were helping to pay the fat cats. And look at some of the fat cats. I think if things were done differently in selecting parties selecting their members for the leadership post, half of those people would not be there. Who is not rude, who doesn't bring baggage, poor financial accountability in their own private business. There's failed businessmen, at least one failed businessman among the cabinet members now, the current cabinet. So these things, the supporters and members, especially the supporters of the PNC, APNU, need to take into consideration. Immediately there were increases in their salaries, but as the first caller pointed out, they scrapped the year-end bonus for the armed services, and the armed services are we can say it clearly, we the PPP don't pretend to have very strong representation not representation, strong support in the armed services. So far, they've acted very professionally, especially at elections time. When they defended the elections commission there, when the crowd was storming it. So that relationship with a professional body has been maintained by the PPPC throughout the years, and that is why we were giving them. We recognizing that the salaries are poor, giving them, and at the same time giving them other options like training. That was massively expanded under the PPPC. The training for the discipline services and other non-salaried bonuses like house lots, access to house lots, and so on. And of course, that applies to other categories of workers. For example, like the nurses. The nurses got together and made little groupings and were able to set up settlements with the land given by the PPPC administration, consisting of their profession and their friends together. 10 months since the no confidence motion passed and key reserves being depleted. This might not jump out at you now. The operator might bring it up from time to time. The last bar of the weekend mirror, but that presents or already prompts us to recognize a very serious concern or serious problem the PPPC will have. The Treasury will be bare. The Treasury will be bare after just 10 months. They liquidate everything. They sop up everything in big fancy fat cat salaries, traveling, and all manner of expenses. The food bill for the cabinet and such level has drastically increased. So in 10 months since the no confidence motion, or the passage of no confidence motion, when we were expecting them to have resigned and probably organized elections already, we're finding that key reserves have been depleted, and this newspaper, the Mirror newspaper, has a very comprehensive article on page 10 of this newspaper, where it illustrates how the monies are. Beautiful graphs. 10 months since the passage of the NCM, no confidence motion, key reserves being depleted. I want to probably, Dr. Irfan had some input into this. It's done in a scholarly fashion with graphs and so on, and it shows using information from the Bank of Guyana and other independent sources. It shows how there's the PNC, APNU, AFC, the fat cats are mopping up, are sucking up, are liquidating the reserves. So the PPPC will have to temper, and I'm trying to do this now, all the exuberance of winning the next election, winning elections and moving on. We will also be having disadvantages. The money will not be there to do certain things. So we need to start, I think, tempering the expectations, not throwing a wet blanket on them, but being realistic. And that is why probably this heading should have been at the top. 10 months since the no confidence motion passage, key reserves being depleted. That should probably be the headlines. And of course, but we know we have a mature audience out there, and they will be able to discriminate in terms of what is the headline news and so on. Headline news for this week should be everything about the claims and objection period, the difficulties that we encountered, and the fact that GCOM seems to be moving ahead, according to this newspaper, to remove over 25,000 Guyanese from the voters list. Remember that threat? Remember that public pronouncement that if you don't collect your card, Well, Anil Nandalal, one of the senior members of the People's Progressive Party and learned lawyer, has again written an article in this newspaper, which you should source and keep as a reference material, saying that there's no connection in the Constitution between the card and you having a right to vote, because there could be, for example, any other credible or accredited identification document. Okay, so that's the next point we have to look at. One of the several points we want to bring out on today's program, and you might want to call in on it. The ID card now, which is a useful document because you can use it at the post office, you can use it at the bank, and you should collect it. But at the same time, there's no part of the Constitution which says that if you don't have the ID card, you cannot vote. So that's the next troublesome, next worrisome aspect of our national life we need to address. And I'm certain that the three commissioners of the PPP the commissioners at the Guyana Elections Commission will be trashing that out, bringing it up for trashing out, and hopefully we will overcome that. But at the same time, it's a good thing if you do go and collect your cards, so that you can use it, make life easier for yourselves at the bank, at the post office, and so on. But coming back now to the elections, the election day. Several persons on this calling into this program after we would have left the live session have volunteered members of their families to help the PPPC on election day. I want to now, from every week now, from now on, getting it right will be highlighting that aspect. The PPPC has already started training of persons, selection and training of persons for election day work. This will be voluntary as always. The only thing will be provided probably transportation to and from the place where you will be stationed, but this is based on commitment, and of course meals and water. So that's the next aspect that I noticed from my notes, kept popping up. People were suddenly exuberant when they realized what madness we have been visited by, what distress we have been visited by with this government, the Granger, Nagamutu, Ramjatan government, that they were wanting to volunteer. So we're taking notes of that, and I'd like to use this platform too to tell you that the PPP head office in Robb Street, Freedom House, has downstairs a suite of rooms which is designated for the election purposes only, and that you can visit there, or you can communicate with that and indicate your willingness to be trained, because of course the party will have to go through, make a final decision on who it's accepting and who's training, but that process has already started. The PPPC is in full election mode. So you'll see us having, for example, fundraisers, you'll see us having activities in election mode, right? So we hope that you particularly would discuss this with your friends, family, relatives, and encourage them to come forward and submit their names to Freedom House or the organizer or any of the Freedom House branches across the country, so that they can be identified and allocated to we need thousands of people, because not only will we have to put people in the polling station itself, but usually the party, and practically all parties does this, have outside at some safe location at a certain designated distance away from every polling station, has representative checking and mobilizing persons. Hello, welcome to Getting It Right.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Bheri.
Good afternoon, thanks. This is Dr. Ramsarran here. Thanks for coming through. Lower your volume.
Yeah, sorry about that. You mentioned the PPP is in campaigning mode.
Campaign mode.
And you also mentioned about Manifesto. But I would like, as a PPP supporter and as a sugar worker, I would like them to state in the manifesto very clearly the plans for the sugar industry and the plans for sugar workers who have been living on a salary or a working salary or rate, wages that was back from since 2014, not a penny increase. And we heading into 2020, have to look after our family and live up to date with everything on 2014 rate and salary. So I need them to be specific, because what I know for sure, they could pull everybody from the sugar belt or go under the PPP. When they say it clearly, what are you doing for the sugar workers? Thank you.
Okay, you see, this is a very interesting program today. That's another issue coming in on our broad topic head today. So I want to thank that gentleman. We haven't forgotten the sugar workers. They're special to us here on getting it right. But you see the big struggle that we have, and when I told you the PPP will have to temper expectations, that's a big section of the workforce, which is being punished now, right? What is the future of the sugar industry? Okay, the Minister of Agriculture recently, a few months back, presented a document on sugar, right? And Gao, I think, made some comments on it. But you're correct. That's a significant section of the population that is hurting. And from the very first weeks of closure of Wales, people started to keep their children at home because they didn't have the wherewithal to send them to school. They might be able to, they have a uniform, school is free, books are free, and so on. But how do you get them there? How do you feed them? And how do you give them a snack? That was our experience in Wales. So I thank the caller for that reminder on behalf of the sugar workers. I can't give out any sneak preview. I won't want to risk that now of our manifesto. But I can tell you, if you've been following the pronouncements of Dr. Jagdeo and Dr. Irfan Ali over recent months, especially Dr. Jagdeo over several months now on his Thursday briefings, and even in Parliament, the corridors of Parliament when he spoke to the media, there are going to be special efforts to mitigate, to assuage, to soothe over the damage and the hurt that has been done to sugar workers. That is stated, and it's probably not written in the same words or lengthy, but it's stated publicly. We are going to look into these issues and probably fast track some of the things we had for sugar. For example, the Skeldon Sugar Estate and the factory. It was so maligned, it was so attacked by the PNC, but then we heard that one of the friends was trying to buy it, and they were trying to make some kind of underhand deal. Well, that Skeldon, if you check Skeldon, the writings and the expectation of Skeldon, it can actually be producing ethanol, not only sugar. We have to move away from the concept that sugar estates or cane farming is only to produce the sweet thing called sugar and probably molasses and alcohol. But you can produce fuel which can be mixed with the regular gasoline and power cars. That's some of the options there, right? Then Skeldon 2, I think there's something called, I might be subject to correction here, the Sukram pasture, I think. It's somewhere around there, and you have two organized co-ops, cattle rearers co-ops, who operate in the area, and Gaisuko was lending a helping hand to them. Like, for example, creating mounds where the animals, when it rains heavily in the savannah, backlands, the animals can take refuge, right? And doing some fencing and drainage. So I think the party, the PPP, probably did not a very complete job in bringing over what was the total picture of Skeldon. And I'm challenging especially the younger intellectuals out there, and even probably people who work in the industry, to come forward and find out if my information some of the things I've just said, if it's correct or if I'm mixing up something, right? But Skeldon was supposed to be an example. Things went wrong, we were criticized, but it's still, if we go now, I think, into office, I agree with that caller, the last caller. We'll have to do certain things that fast track some of the things that we wanted to do for sugar. Sugar is special to Guyana, and we make no bones about it. The sugar workers support us, and that's why they're being punished. That's why they're being punished. Hello, welcome to Getting It Right.
Good afternoon.
Speak up, please.
I just want to clear up something with the when you heard people saying that Mr. Jagdeo is refusing to go back to Parliament. The government refused to obey the Constitution. They disobey the Constitution, and they refused to call the elections. I don't know why people saying that, Mr. Jagdeo, they want to go back to Parliament. The first thing is that they disrespect and disobey the Constitution. They were supposed to hold the election in 3 months.
Yeah, you're right. They're now turning the blame. The people who should have been offended.
They want to bully people to rule the people. They want to go to election, and now they're bullying the people to rule over the people.
Yes.
And say that if Mr. Jagdeo don't want to go back to Parliament, he's supposed to go on to election. Another thing, I would like to see that the matter which becomes here, go back to the court, go back to the High Court, they should file something and it becomes here to the High Court, perhaps because she's making a claim that she will remove the name from the original list and put it on a separate list, which I don't see no sense in that you're removing the name from one list to put it on, and you could remove many names from the list, not just the names that they're claiming that, is that they're not finding these people. And I don't think that becomes just to go and start people.
But the point is, the mere fact that the names are there, it comes from a similar exercise a few years ago. Same rigorous exercise. So if we accept that that exercise was not challenged by anybody, they mean those people, those names there are legitimate, okay? And even if there's some query, it can be only that a query, you can't take it out because the said outfit GCOM created that list. That list is not what the PPP set up or what any party set up. You follow me? So that would be my line of argument too, right? But I fully appreciate what you're saying, right?
Another thing, somebody was making a claim on a television program as well that, sometimes when people go to GCOM to upload the ID card, they give them attitude, that the ID card is not finished, they're not, talking to them properly, so people have to travel from places to come to the ID card, and then when you go to the ID card, so sometimes people are a bit frustrated that, when they go there, they're not getting the ID card, so they're giving it enough time. But I was glad to see that the matter go back to court and let you get to understand that she cannot do this.
Okay.
I was glad to see that the matter go back.
But you see, when court matters are drawn out, for example, in I think it's Kenya and Jamaica, when they brought up things with elections, it was done within weeks. In Guyana, it's taken years. Look at the case, the court case that we have there. Several new elections come in, they keep stretching it out. So court is nice for arguing, but you would be giving the PNC a lease on life, right? Probably we gotta start thinking of mass action, in peaceful protest and so on. And as the newspaper says today, I don't know if you guys get the Mirror in your area. Protests will resume if Parliament is not dissolved on December the 2nd. Sorry. So going to court is good. Shows we're law-abiding, but it's lengthy. Not so?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for coming through.
Thank you, sir.
And the cough is spoiling my last 3 or 4 minutes on the program. I hope that you will bear with me. I'll be here even in this available at the said numbers for the next hour or two, listening to your calls, and then again I'm inviting persons who would like to join us here. Especially persons who have been following the program for years. I'm being very open, I have an open door policy. I'm willing to entertain persons joining me here and discussing, raising their issues from their point of view, especially community issues in their community. Regardless of where they come from, I can't bring them down here, but they can, if they get down to the studio and forewarn us a week or so in advance, we will make the program more and more with better wider participation from the grassroots level. Why I'm telling you this is because right now I'm part of a national campaign of the PPP for the past several months, visiting homes. This is how the Jaganite Party works. We're getting back to the old style. We're getting back to the thing that made the PPP strong, the Jaganite Party strong. Going house to house, and there's so many words of encouragement. For example, several times I went for about 10 days, consecutive days. I walked around with a few people in Sophia. Initially, some people were a bit apprehensive of going into Sophia, right? But we went there was not a single custom. There were people who took our flyers and said, yes, I am a PNC, I'm taking a flyer, and so on, but they took it. Previous to that, there used to be custom, people frightened to go to Sophia and so on and so forth. So things have changed, and I want to bring this message over, especially to members of the PPP and supporters of the PPP, because sometimes we are locked into certain things. The APNU supporters, the PNC supporters, they're feeling the pinch. They know what's going on, right? So you go, that a good testing method, the pulse beat is, you visit their communities, you go to Sophia, not a single custom, not one single custom. I moved along with a team of 2, myself and someone else, and sometimes 2 or 3 other persons join us. Very peaceful, engaging. They come to the gate, and some of them clearly we are PNC, but I'm going to read your flyer, and they would join you in a discussion. So we need to do lots more work, the party, and I want to thank the activists, especially. I want to thank the activists who did such a great job with it over the past few days for the just closed claims and objection period, doing all the check-in. It's hard, laborious work, tedious work, but I want to thank you. I want to remind you that you have a lunch date with Dr. Ramsarran on channel 69 every Saturday at noon. Lunch date, and same Saturdays, every Saturdays on the same studio, 6 to 5 or MTV. We can have a discussion from 4 to 5. Thank you for being with me. Bye-bye.